Thank you very much for joining us this evening for the Artist and Inspiration program. I'm Cheryl Bronstein, Director of Interpretation at the Adirondack Experience. And my main question is why we are not all here. We're here, it doesn't look right. A few housekeeping notes. Actually, I'm gonna have a little bit of an unusual housekeeping note today. We do know that there's been a lot of power losses. If the power does go off in this building, just it'll be okay. Just wait a moment, and then the generator will kick back on, and we'll have light on. But just want to give everybody a quick warning. It could get dark if the storms come back and hit our power. Want to let you all know that the bathrooms are right behind me, and if there's an emergency, highly unlikely, please do go ahead and exit the auditorium through either the door that you came in or either of the two doors behind you that are both marked. Tonight's program will be recorded and available on the museum's website in the next few days, so just keep an eye on that if you want to share it or if you saw anything that you want to catch again. I would like to start this evening's program by acknowledging that the Adirondack Experience is situated on the Aboriginal territories of the Mohawk and Abenaki community. Indigenous people continue to live in this region and practice their teachings and lifeways. Tonight, I am delighted to introduce a true Adirondack treasure. Carl Heilman has lived in the Adirondacks since 1973. He began photographing the wilderness landscape in 1975, working to capture both the grandeur of these special places and the emotional and spiritual connection he has felt. His passion for spending as much time as possible, something that we can all relate to, in some of the wildest regions of the Adirondacks soon became a lifelong quest to create images that record the essence of a true wilderness experience and help convey that feeling to others. Today, Carl is a full-time professional outdoor nature photographer. His works are in the Adirondack Experience collection, and he is featured in the opening of our Life in the Adirondacks exhibition video. He's been featured in several PBS documentaries and programs, and his works are also on view throughout and beyond the region, including at the New York State Museum, James Madison's Montpelier, and at the Adirondack Park Visitor Interpretive Centers. Tonight's program will run for about an hour, and then we'll have a short Q&A after Carl has done sharing his work with us. And then Carl and Meg will stick around for a few more minutes to take any other questions and certainly if anybody wants to browse their products. Thank you very much. Carl.
Thanks so much. It's a real pleasure to be here at the Adirondack Experience. I was happening to think, looking back there at the projection booth, this is where I got my start in AV some years ago, where at that point I wanted to get into multiple projectors for slides, and I set up two slide projectors side by side, had a music track that I was playing, and moved the box back and forth between the two images. And it worked. Things have gotten a lot more advanced now, so this evening's program kind of goes a little bit into my history with photography and in the region. So I'm starting with actually one of my most recent photos. If you follow me on Facebook, this is something I just posted a couple weeks ago. Brant Lake is home. It's been an inspiration, a lifetime inspiration. Having my grandfather bought property in Brant Lake in 1948, and I was born in 54. My parents bought the property along the lake in 58, and so I've always been coming to the Adirondacks and moved up here when the opportunity arose when I was 18. And this is a view from our house on Brant Lake. Actually back then Brant Lake was always in my blood. I had actually did a third grade art project in drawing of Brant Lake and so on. Back then I put a few sailing ships on it, Columbus style sailing ships and things like that. Haven't seen any of them on there though. My first winter in the Adirondacks I spent after I was, they had a boat rental business, and I was taking care of that through the summer. And then as winter came around, I was collecting some firewood that I thought would take me through the winter. And long around the end of December, or I think it was only halfway through December, where that was when winter was winter. And I mean, by then in December, we had 25 below, 30 below, 35 below. And the pile of firewood was dwindling very quickly. So I knew if I wanted to stay in the Adirondacks through the winter, I had better start cutting more wood. And that's pretty much what I did that whole first winter. To keep a frame house warm, a 2-story frame house warm that had no insulation. And when you wake up in the morning and it's 35 below outside, is you had frost on the walls on the inside. It was an adventure, and I'd love to do it again. So after that first winter, I decided I wanted to get out and enjoy the next one. So I got my firewood, knew how much I needed, got that all cut ahead of time, and made a pair of snowshoes. And the snowshoes at that point, this is 1974, snowshoes that were recommended for me were about 4 feet long, 13 inches wide. And so that's what I started snowshoeing on, as perhaps some of you did as well back then. And I did a hike behind the house, and from there I started looking at some trail guides, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go up Faro Mountain. I bushwhacked up Faro Mountain on a winter day, and from the top of Faro I could look off to the high peaks glistening in the distance, and it's like, oh, that's where I'm going next weekend. And found myself on top of Algonquin on a winter day, the end of January, the wind whipping around me, on a day where you lean into it, and you just kind of feel like you're flying up there. And it was an experience. I just basically fell in love with the Adirondacks and the wilderness, and spent as much time as I could after that trying to get out as often as I could, but wanted to find a way to hold on to that feeling of being there. So I thought, by picking up a camera and taking some photos, I might be able to do that. And as anybody who's picked up a camera knows, there's a process until you get the ones that help bring through that feeling of being there. This is slide number 2 and box number 1, taken with Minolta 101 on a roll of Kodachrome 64, 36 exposures. It was close to what I wanted to see, but there was a lot I still didn't know about photography on slide number 2. Now, looking back, I thought what was interesting was that I really wanted to get into panoramic photography from the beginning. So box number 1, slide number 6, 7, and 8. I climbed a tree up on our property up on top of the hill, and from the top of the tree I had this great view over Brant Lake to the peaks in the background. And it wasn't until probably 20 years later where I could actually scan them, stitch them together, and create the panorama that I captured back in fall of 1975. So I'd get a lot of mileage out of a roll of film at that point. This is frame number 13 on a trip up Mount Marcy, a snowy September day where I had a view where the clouds opened up for a little bit. And selfies aren't anything new. This is slide number 30. I'm sorry, slide number 20. And you can see that the jeans hanging off to the side, they were probably the ones I went up Mount Marcy in. All the mud caked up and down the inside of the legs. And for frame number 24, a great sunset over Brant Lake. Again, I can go through that and I can pick out all the details that should be there that aren't, but it was still a fun thing to do. And at that point, I still had 12 more frames on that roll of film. So back then, we had a lot more visible auroras that I remember than we have had in recent years. And beautiful northern lights that would reach 45 degrees or higher in the sky, and quite visible, not like the ones I've photographed in recent years where it's like you have to take the picture with a camera if you're going to see it and show it to anybody because it is so faint. I mean, these were, you can see, it's drowning out the stars in the sky. And I'm glad that at that point, this was the first winter, so this was 1975, glad at that point that it had been suggested to me to pick up a tripod by a photographer I met in the woods the one day, and could experiment around with photos like this. Something else that I wished that I had learned early on was just the idea that the photos that I'm taking could have some historical significance someday. And when I first started taking pictures, I was just so involved with the wilderness aspect that if there were buildings in the picture, I typically wouldn't take the picture. If I was standing on top of a mountain, if there was a lean-to there, I didn't take the picture. And I'm so glad that I had taken this one, because it was only a few years later where the cows were gone, and this is the view. And now at this point, the trees have grown up all along there as you go in the Adirondack Lodge Road, so that you hardly even see the barn anymore and see the view. So at that younger age, I was always kind of in the moment, having a great time, and another selfie, spending as much time as I could in the wild places, just loving every moment of the photography and learning more about the photography so I could have the pictures looking the way that the ones that I saw in Adirondack Life did. Clyde Smith was an inspiration at that point. He was a great photographer, and he worked with people in the pictures and did a lot of the landscapes for the early Adirondack Life work. So in fall of 1979, I met my wonderful wife, and we both shared the enjoyment of the outdoors, and did a lot of paddling, hiking, snowshoeing, skiing, and she introduced me to skiing. And then in March of 1980, we did our honeymoon before we got married, and did 3-week-long trips in the Adirondacks in the month of March, having a great time snowshoeing in the backcountry. This is a shot from then of a veil of clouds over the summit of Mount Marcy that just kind of kept wafting over the top as it was there. And we soon added our son Carl III and Greta, and we enjoyed having a great time taking them out as often as we could, bicycling, camping, canoeing, and so on. We had decided the kids weren't going to slow us down, but we found they had their own challenges anyhow, but we got out as much as we could with them. It was around the early 1990s when I was doing an AV project for the for both Vics on the waterways, and was introduced to Hornbeck canoes. And Hornbeck canoes opened up another world for me, and being able to just easily access the waters of a lot of these wild waterways around here, both in nice weather and sometimes some rather sketchy paddling weather. So then in 1996, I bought a Noblex panoramic camera. And this panoramic camera would photograph 136 degrees on film. It had a spinning lens. And so this got me involved more in the panoramic aspect of things. I wanted to produce a pair of panoramic posters from the summit of Mount Marcy. And at that point, digital technology was far enough along that I could give 2 images to a pair of panoramas to the printer, and they could scan them and stitch them together to create the 180-degree image that I wanted. And the panoramic equipment gave me the opportunity to capture more of my vision, and it was fun going back to all the places that I visited before, but being able to capture them in a whole different way than I could before. And it was the panoramic images that led me to a contract with Rizzoli for my first book, Adirondack's Views of American Wilderness. And once the contract was signed, we were talking a bit about the next panoramic camera, and bought a camera where the head of it would rotate a full 360 degrees so that I could capture the full view from a mountaintop if I wanted to. And this was in the first roll of film that I had shot with that. This is a view from Blue Mountain, the sunrise view from Blue Mountain. And around the same time, I also got into filters to help enhance the images and allow me to work in times other than the golden hour of light. And so I did what I kind of call now pre-processing, where it allowed me to enhance the color, bring together the tones of the landscape in a way that I wasn't able to by just shooting without the filters on. And so this was the cover of my first book. This is a view from Treadway overlooking Faro Lake. And I took the camera most everywhere, back in the Hornbeck canoe. One of the places that I had really enjoyed going to at that point was Wolf Pond, and this was before the trail was there. So there was a little bushwhack path, and I'd take my canoe and I'd go in that, and then I'd drop it down into the flow that's there and paddle up the flow and back up into the pond. And actually in the first book, 10% of the photos were taken from here. 10% of the photos in the book came from this location. It represented the high peaks, it represented the waterways, and there was also a bog on the pond, so it kind of captured that whole feel. It was just a really special, unique place to photograph. And also getting back to places like Marcy Dam, and again, the historic value. All of a sudden, you know, it's like, well, Marcy Dam's not there anymore the way it used to be. So I'm glad that I had captured some different, more unique photos of it while it was there. My classic Cascade Dawn shot was taken on a beautiful June morning in the year 2000. The panoramic equipment was great and allowed me to do this. This is the full 360 view. Typically, we have it cropped down for the uses that we do. The only issue with the panoramic equipment was the camera itself weighed 11 pounds. And the first tripod that I used for it weighed 10 pounds. And so just between the camera and the tripod, you had 21 pounds, and then the hiking gear on top of it. So my pack weight was usually up somewhere between 35 and 40 pounds to go out for a photo trip like that. And I got it back up on Algonquin as well. Colors aren't coming through up there quite as well as I'd like. If you can see off to the left side of the center there's kind of a circular area it's actually a rainbow. It's what's called the glory. When conditions are just right and you're on the summit, the clouds kind of come around the backside of coming around the backside of the mountain. If they're close enough, the sun is coming behind you. It'll cast your shadow down into the cloud, and you'll get this complete rainbow around your shadow there in the cloud. It's a really unique, special thing to see. May 2007, I bought my first digital camera, my first DSLR. And I went to a spot to Diamond Point on Lake George, and I set the film camera up, and I set the digital camera up beside it because I knew what I was going to get with film, but I still didn't know what I was going to get with digital. And when I finished the shoot, I went back home and popped the card out of the camera into the computer, and I was hooked, and I never really looked back. So the digital technology allowed me to better capture the vision that I had when I was there, and better create the images that were showing what I was seeing, was trying to communicate to others. So that was a sunset over Brant Lake in 2007. And also kind of getting to that historic look again. This is a view of the old red barn up by Keene when it was there some years ago. And I had set up to photograph the stars. And I'd been seeing car lights going by on the road. And then as I was there, I heard a truck coming down the hill. And as this truck was coming down the hill, it lighted up the whole foreground for me and gave me the effect that I had here that night. So kind of the next step was for the Nikon D750 in September of 2014. And I also enjoyed doing panoramic views with the digital equipment, where these are stitched together instead of having just one continuous piece of film as I had before. And the Nikon D750 was a big step up in digital technology, both in size of the image and how clean and the images were. And to kind of wrap up this section, this takes us to, again, this year, this spring, on a photo tour that I was doing for the Wild Center, where we ended up on Lake Durant in the evening. And that's supposed to be red. And it was evening sunset, the color tones in the sky, and the storm was going over, and just beautiful sunset tones on the clouds there. So I thought I'd move into, I've always enjoyed doing projects. And it's fun to have a project because you just get all these thoughts related to it of images that I want to capture and add into it. And the best project, well, I've enjoyed they've all been really good projects. I shouldn't say the best, but one that I especially enjoyed, and something that I grew up on Walt Disney. And Disney, if you remember Disney, they had those year-long shoots at a location and so on. So I guess I always had that in my head. And so when Adirondack Life came along and emailed me and said, would you like to do a year-long shoot where you take the same picture in each month of the year? And I'm like, oh yeah. And so they contacted me in September of 2014. They gave me a choice of where I wanted to go. They just had a couple requirements really of mountains, water, and a location where I could work in varying lighting conditions and so on, and some night shooting as well as daytime and the other moods. So what started out as a 12-month shoot for 2015 ended up being a real project where I went up the Giant Ridge Trail 34 times that year to capture the changes and nuances that were going on. So this is, they always say to not use the same tripod holes. If you're a photographer, just try and find different tripod holes than the photographer that was there ahead of you. And so I've always tried to do that, but at the same time, in this one, I had to find my tripod holes because I had to set the camera and the tripod in exactly the same place each time. So these are my tripod holes on the Giant Ridge Trail, on a ridge where I'm overlooking the giant wash bowl and then the high peaks back behind it. So another requirement for me was finding a location where anybody could get there so that I wasn't leading a path off to some unknown place where everybody would be traipsing through the backcountry trying to find it. So this was a nice, easy one right along the trail, on the Giant Ridge Trail. A mile and a half up, 1,600 feet up, and so it was 45-minute hike, 45-minute drive. So if I saw conditions I wanted to get into, I could leave home and I could be on location an hour and a half later. So this is January 13th, 2015, and I went up and I got my shot. This was a beautiful morning shot where you've got nice pink colors above the horizon, nice blue tones in the sky and so on. It was where you get that shadow of light, which would be that darker edge, is kind of a bluer edge, but above it is a real nice pink tone. And on my February shot, I went up and I was in the clouds. I was hoping to be above the clouds, and I was in the clouds. And while I was there, I thought, well, I'll wander some. and see if I can find another place to photograph. And so I went further up the trail, and it actually opened up for about a 2-minute period. And I got this shot looking out kind of through the clouds. But I still don't think it would have worked out for a shot I was trying to do down at the location where I really wanted to be. And I made 3 trips in March. The first was on March the 6th. And I went for the moon set, and I knew that the moon would be setting around the wolf jaws. But what I didn't know was how perfectly it would settle into the wolf jaw notch, right on top of Algonquin that you can see through the notch there. And this is a sequence that is in the here in the show in the museum. This is when I started thinking about time lapse, and started doing a lot more of it through the rest of the shoot as I was there. Here the sun comes up, the shadows move down the mountains. "25 below." That'll make you feel better when you walk outside again. So April showers and the thaw bring May flowers. This was a different shot that I did rather than the actual shot on May 13th while I was up there. Once I was up and I started doing the time lapse, I could go, I could set one camera, because I'm working with 2 D750 camera bodies. So I'd set one camera up on location to get the shot, and I'd set up on a time lapse that would be going for 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so. And I could take another camera and I could wander around. And I enjoyed doing that. Mm-hmm. And so this is a June 13th clouds sunrise. I was always trying to get up there above the clouds. It has nice pink tones in the sky to the left and so on. And as the sun came up and the clouds broke apart, I had these nice clouds over the summit of Round Mountain and foreground up the Johns Brook Valley off to the side. And this is the time lapse of that. And about now is when the pink colors are coming. And then it starts clearing off. This is about a 2.5 to 3 hour time lapse. And we're on to another beautiful summer day, June this was. And so this was a shot that I took while I happened to be wandering around on another shoot. This was the end of June in 2015 from further up the trail. In July, I was up there for kind of the perfect summer day, nice blue skies and clouds over the mountains, reflections of all of it there in the giant wash bowl. And on a hot summer day, you think of ice cream. And I thought these balsam cones looked a lot like ice cream cones with that sap oozing down over them. Mountains in the background. I got this great idea in my head to see if I could get up there and get lightning over the peaks. And so, being an hour and a half away, I could, kind of watch the clouds and watch for the rain and so on. And I did get up there after a thunderstorm had passed. And potentially another one was coming, and I was hoping I could get it before it did, but it never happened. But anyhow, it's probably just as well that it did. But here's a time lapse of that. And you can see the showers moving in, and the frantic trying to keep the camera dry, and then just the clouds kind of wafting along on a nice summer day. You can see the thicker clouds coming in, but they never materialized enough to form another thunderhead. And again, they were coming directly at me. I was looking for that you know, the storm's just moving along the edge to the south so that I could be above it and far enough away from, anyhow. If you don't imagine these things, they'll never happen. Then evening light, night light. And on August 7th and 8th, I went up for the evening light. It seemed like it would be a nice time to capture a sunset, which didn't work out as well. But there were nice stars at night. And then stayed up on the ridge for the sunrise the next morning. And I had two cameras going. I had one camera going with a 30-minute exposure and another one going on 20-second exposures, and just kind of like one after another, so it was doing like a time-lapse sequence. And so one of the cameras was aimed higher, one was for, quote, the shot that I was going for. And at 11:41, and I know that exactly because I can tell from the pictures that I took, all the information is there. I was lying there on my back, and all of a sudden, over the top of my head, here comes this streak of light right down through to just above Dick's Mountain in the background. And this was during the Perseid meteor time. So then you just pause and you listen to you hold your breath and you listen to the cameras. Well, did you catch it? It's like, was it in between that 2 seconds in between frames? And the one was the 30-minute exposure, and you can see the streak there that's within that frame. And then in this frame, in the 20-second exposure. And again, this is the time lapse of that evening. This was there's some color on the horizon in the sky. The clouds were pretty thick. I knew it was going to clear out at some point, but it's always kind of that iffy on just when it's going to do that. And then as it got darker, it did clear out. The clouds opened up on both sides, and at some point there you'll see a streak come right there, come right down the center. The planes are going every which way. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a partial moon that came up and lit up the landscape. And then in the morning, this is all pinks and soft pastel tones all through there. The clouds were just flowing over the edge of the mountain as the sun came up. And this is, quote, the view I was doing for Adirondack Life. Again, the color kind of coming down to the horizon as the sunlight is coming down over the peaks. And so that time lapse encompasses the whole evening, overnight, and into the sunrise in the morning. So on August 23rd that month, we did a family trip. These are our grandkids clambering up a log along the trail. And we portaged a hornbeck canoe. My son portaged the hornbeck. I'll give him credit for that. He portaged the hornbeck canoe to the wash bowl. And I had this great idea of trying to get pictures of the hornbeck in the wash bowl from up at my spot up the hill. And it was a fun day. We were communicating back and forth with a two-way walkie-talkie. And you can see there the very small on the right side of the pond, there's a little speck of a canoe. It really doesn't show up much from that far up the hill. It was a pretty view anyhow. I went up twice in September looking for a fall color that year. I did all of my photo tours and fall workshops that year. And then we had fall color. This was 2015, and the fall color that year came on October 12th after and it just waited, and then it all turned, and it was spectacular when it did. But nobody in my photo tours got to enjoy it that year. But I did go up giant for photos, fall photos. The reflections of the wash bowl were spectacular. And just a week later, it looked like this. 6 days. This was on October 18th. And this is a time lapse from that morning where I went up expecting the snow. I knew there was going to be snow, and I knew there would be some color left. And watching, there was snow kind of coming down a little bit early on, just some, a few spitting snow. And then it all started to, as the sun came up further, it started opening up and clearing up, and turned into a really spectacular morning. Shot some panoramas, shot some standard photography, and just had a great time up there. So I went up through November and December, freeze, snow, and a thaw. I went up with my son about the third week of, well, it was just after Christmas, and there was no snow, no ice. The wash bowl had completely opened up, and it looked like spring. We were in shorts. And now, you know, I hike in shorts in chillier weather than some people do. But we were in shorts. It was a really warm day for that, and I was starting to wonder if I was going to get a real winter end to the shoot that I was doing, to the project. And back, it was, let's see, on December 30th, winter moved back in again, and it had a beautiful morning with clouds, with ice, and a covering of snow again, and winter was back in full force. And this is a time lapse that I shot that morning as the clouds were blowing in from the south, and you can see them kind of start to fill in all through the valley, dance around through the valleys there as the moisture is moving in. And then as the snow started coming down, and it would occasionally just completely close in, and then open up again, and close in again, and open up. And then finally it just totally socked in, and I was kind of looking at it as pulling the curtain down on the year for me, and ended my year of photography for Adirondack life. And I'd love to do it again. And actually I did do another project. The year after that, so that'd be 2016, I got the idea to do a photograph on Lake George, where I was photographing sunrise through the whole year, every 2 weeks. And I did, and I photographed from where the sun rose in the winter on this furthest south that rises up to the summer solstice and then back down again. It was a really enjoyable thing to do. So another project I was doing around then was, Rizzoli contracted me to do a book on the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Smoky Mountains areas, the Smokies, Shenandoah, Blue Ridge. And I did this shoot from October 2016 to August 23rd, 2017. This is Old Rag Mountain in Shenandoah National Park. And I remember going up there and thinking, this looks a lot like glacial erratics, but I knew that the glaciers never made it that far south. And come to read that this is granite, and come to read that these weathered in place. That there are these huge boulders up there. That one's probably 20 feet across. And these huge boulders up on top of these of Old Rag Mountain. And they're just all there from weathering forces of nature that way. This is a view of Charlie's Bunyan down in the Great Smoky National Park. So I had 5 week-long trips that ended with the eclipse. This was a fall shoot, fall in the Shenandoah National Park from the first trip that I had done down there in October of 16. And Water Rock Knob, looking to the Smokies off in the distance. This is along the Blue Ridge Parkway. This day was supposed to start out as a short hike to a nearby outlook, And I talked with somebody, I was actually going the other direction, and somebody said, oh, there's a better view this way. And as I kept going, I'm thinking, well, I guess if I had to, I could go the whole way to Water Rock Knob, which was a 10-mile hike. And so it ended up, that's what I did. And I was glad I did, because the conditions up there were spectacular and much better than what I had along the way. One of the most popular photography locations along the Blue Ridge is the Mabry Mill. And I photographed this in spring flowers, summer or fall color, and also in the winter with a couple of cardinals standing there on the fence. In the first week of June of 17, I went down to the Smokies to photograph the synchronous fireflies. And it was really tough to get into where they actually happened. And I got thinking about it. It's like, well, if you're photographing fireflies, it doesn't matter if they're all going on or off at once anyhow. So I might as well just go in Cades Cove, where I can photograph some fireflies and get the view that I wanted, and it'd be a whole lot easier. So that's what I did here. But then in August 21st of 17, I went down for the eclipse. And I put this in this evening partly because in April 2024, we have a total eclipse here that's covering 95% of the Adirondacks. And I'm mentioning it because this is the most spectacular thing I have ever seen in nature. To stand under the dark side of the moon and watch that dusky glow all around you.
So there, it's darker, it's coming that direction. Look at that direction without the glow.
You can start seeing the shadow coming.
Yeah, this is time for.
So I had a GoPro going with the video, and I had
I'm just gonna.
a camera set up for time lapse for the wide angle, and then I had another one shooting tighter in shots of the sun.
I can't do it also, but I can.
We were in Cades Cove, and there were tons of cars. I was probably 3 or 4 miles from the gate when I got there, and cars just kind of kept flooding in. But I found a spot in a field.
Here's Venus. Oh, yep. There's Venus. Yep. So,
There was just 2 other photographers and me.
There we are. See it. There they are. See them?
Yeah. You could hear them hollering the whole way down the other end of Cades Cove.
listen to that. Oh my God. Oh, jeez. Oh.
A deer came and bedded down in the field in front of us. The birds
I see a
stopped.
star up there with it.
We had 2.5 minutes of totality.
There's the diamond.
There's a diamond.
Look at that.
That started lighting up, and the deer got up and ran away again.
Oh my God.
One of the questions one of the things I've been wondering about was I knew the clouds formed over the mountaintops and wondered if when the sun was going behind the moon, whether it would cool the
That was
atmosphere
incredible.
and the clouds would go away, dissipate.
I
And
am
it
so
did.
happy those clouds moved out. That
And you can
was,
see in this sequence then where they start coming back as the sunlight came back and bringing the moisture up out of the valleys, forming the clouds over the top of the
that seems
mountains.
cool out here. That seemed really. I'm sure it was 2 minutes, but it's like that.
It's almost too
Yes, a couple times, and we shot it a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Because this was good. There, just play. Let's see, stare, click, wait, crack. Right.
Yeah.
That is 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's where you start reviewing images.
There's my version, and once I pull the sky, once I pull
So I put this into the program because of the coming eclipse, and just to let everybody know that if you want to, if you are planning to see the eclipse, is go where you can see it, where you can be sure you can see it, so that it's not covered in clouds, and to go where it's total. It's like if you say in Brant Lake, we're at like 99.95%. But that's not enough to take off the glasses. And if you want to see a total eclipse, is go where it's total, and you take off the glasses, and you look up there, and the moon is the blackest spot you'll ever see. And around it, you have this whole halo of glow, the corona, and the blue sky, deep blue sky around it with stars in it, and the dusky glow on the horizon. It is just amazing to see. So, we're going from a new moon that covered the sun to a supermoon on ampersand. This was evening light, beautiful pinks in the sky and so on, and blue tones around where the moon is. This is leading into the trails book that I did for Rizzoli in 2018. And I went back up on one of my favorite peaks, back up on Algonquin, doing some snow chewing, my son skiing up there. And also went up Wright's Peak for a shoot for the book, and was up there. I was hoping to get up again above the clouds. I'm always kind of looking for these conditions to get above the clouds, and most of the time I end up in the clouds. But it was still pretty cool as the clouds were going over, and you'd have these clouds over the peak and then just opening up just for these brief amounts of time as the air was clearing out that morning. You can just see the summit before it socks back in again. And eventually by around noon, it did clear off. It was warmer than 25 below that morning, which made it easier. And then from the high peaks, this is, so that was March in the high peaks, and this is March along Lake George from the sunrise shoot I've been doing in 2016. It's amazing how an hour away, conditions are just so different. Real nice sunrise tones in that. This was one of those mornings where the red sunrise in the morning, sailors take warning, comes through. As the had a beautiful sunrise with really nice red tones and so on. And within 2 hours, the clouds kept moving in. Beautiful calm water. And by the time I left, the rain was coming down. Another shoot that I did in 2018 was kind of going through the seasons here and then around different parts of the park. This was the last snow in the peaks on Coon Mountain in the Champlain Valley on April 22nd. And I went up Baxter Mountain in the Keene Valley area for a sunrise shoot. And that one I did get above the fog. And this is a time-lapse sequence of the fog that morning. And it's just really cool to see as the sun came up and the air started mixing, all the things that start going on in the fog there in the valley. It's got these waves going back and forth, and it's like sloshing back and forth and so on. And you see the wind's really coming over the peaks up there on the top. And then as the sun's getting higher and higher, the fog starts dissipating until it finally all disappears. One of my favorite spots to hike has always been the El Sable Club. And most of my hiking there was before they had hiking permits or parking permits. I don't think I've been in since then. But anyhow, I understand the need for them there. There were a lot of people in there, and they have a lot of special spots. This is a shot of Rainbow Falls, and I found out when you can actually see a rainbow at Rainbow Falls too. And this is the view from Indian Head with I went in there for the full moon. This was the end of June 2018, and I knew because of how far north the sun would be rising, the moon would be setting in an angle where it would be going right across that notch down along the El Sable Lakes. So the color coming in, and you can see that fog back there in that valley too, dancing all around back there. And I wandered through the Adirondacks through the summer, did water trails, mountain trails, and photographed the September 1st, the first Light the Tower event up on Hurricane. Up there in the Milky Way looking south, and when they lit the tower that evening. I wandered around. This is view from Goodnow, sunrise looking over the high peaks from Goodnow Mountain, view from the tower. And this is Lake Harris, where I had a cooperative blue heron there for a photo tour that I've been doing. In the same area is the Essex chain of lakes. And on a foggy morning, this was when I was below the fog instead of above the fog. But also in that area is the Boreas Ponds, and it's just a stunningly beautiful place to get in and paddle. Not too far south of there is Snowy Mountain. And I went up Snowy, I went to the tower and found a family that was there first. And as I was there, I was watching chipmunks kind of running around, and they dropped their packs there at the bottom of the tower. And I thought, well, I know what chipmunks do, so I thought, I'll tell them, I'll watch their packs for them when they go up. And so they went on up, and I'm there kind of watching these chipmunks going around. All of a sudden, this one disappeared. And I'm like, where did he go? And that's where I found him. So, watch your packs. I let them know. Something I had never really done before was hike the Northville Placid Trail. And this is a spot down near Passaico. I went up to the north end for falls up there and some different things as well. And I'm going to pass that. And went down in the Pine Orchard, Tennant Creek area. This is a view looking up Tennant Creek to the second falls and around the Hope Falls area. And in the western region, this is a view of from the Bold Mountain Fire Tower overlooking the Fulton chain of lakes. Moss Lake, where there's both a hiking trail and a water trail. And reflections on a beautiful fall day during the photo tour that I did there. And looking for places to photograph the Milky Way, I was looking for one of the darkest places I could find in the park. This is over in Limekiln Lake, where there weren't any town lights to the west, nothing to the south, north. It was just a really clean view for photographing the night sky. This is a 30-minute exposure taken there on Limekiln Lake that night. Lake Lila, heading back north again, north of the Fulton Chain area. This is Tooley Pond along the Tooley Pond Road, and the Grass River. The Grass River along the Tooley Pond Road has a half dozen waterfalls within a short distance of the road. A great place to explore, and one of the more remote areas of the park and quiet areas of the park. I was just up there with a photo tour just a week, 2 weeks ago. This is Bassford Falls along the Grass River there. And a more recent aurora, this was one that was just barely visible to the eye, but this is over Brant Lake. And doing a time lapse of a number of photos that are like 25-second exposures and doing slow blending gives a feel of what it's like to actually be there and see the northern lights. The light shafts come down and dance around on the horizon. In Lake George area, this is the Pilot Knob, LGLC, the Schumann Preserve. Rogers Slide, there's both the rock climb there and the trail, and I did a climb there for the Adirondack Explorer one time, and it's really unique because you look right down that slide right to the water. Cat Mountain is one of my favorite in the Lake George area, and here's my son and I were up there one morning. This is a time lapse of the valley fog moving in ahead of a weather system that was moving in. It's sunrise. Lots of special times in the mountains. My grandson Gabe, we went up on Cat Mountain for a moonrise, and there we go. And you can watch as I knew the moon would be coming up while there was still light in the sky. It's a great time to photograph the the full moon rising. And so you can watch as the shadow goes, and then the moon comes up from right behind Black Mountain.
Nice.
And it was a nice orangey golden glow to it before it turned much brighter. Fall transitions into early winter, which comes more quickly in the peaks. This is Connery Pond, Whiteface Mountain. And that was the end of, at the same time in Lake George, you still have fall color. This is a sunrise view from the pinnacle. And it's not long before winter's back in full force, with Adirondack enjoying wherever you'd like to be going along the Adirondack trails. And I'm going to end with, I've enjoyed working with Dan Bergren over the years, and for Earth Day a few years back, he had contacted me and asked if I would if I'd like to put imagery to his song, This Planet We Call Home.
How long ago did John Muir say, take care of this planet you roam? Care for the land, the water, and the air. Care for this place we call home. Take care of this planet we call home. Mountains of earth are grand, withstanding geologic power. The mountains of earth know time, using centuries instead of hours. How long ago did Rachel Carson say, take care of this planet you roam? Care for the land, the water, and the air. Care for this place we call home. Take care of this planet we call home. Forests of earth are alive. The same elements are within us. The forests of earth know time, using decades instead of minutes. How long ago did Bill McKibben say, take care of this planet you roam? Care for the land, the water, and the air. Care for this place we call home. Take care of this planet we call home. The rivers of earth give us life. Each spring they rise and beckon. The rivers of earth know time, using seasons instead of seconds. How long ago did my conscience say, take care of this planet you roam? Care for the land, the water, and the air. Care for this place we call home. Take care of each other and our home.
Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions if folks have. Yes?
Ever taken any inspiration from the pages of the New York State Conservationist?
Inspiration from the pages of the Conservationist. I had gotten I was more Adirondack life. I mean, I've enjoyed the Conservationist. I had subscribed way long ago, and but it's a great publication. So there's so many. I've gotten a lot of my inspiration from just being out there, And it's like, you know, when I go one place, I go someplace and then I'm looking out there and seeing where I can go. That's how I found Wolf Pond. When I was up on top of Mount Marcy, shooting the panoramas for all day long, shooting the panoramas for the poster that I want to do. And I'm looking all around, you know, it's like, where are views I can get looking back? And things like that, driving along, seeing ledges up there and thinking, oh, well, that would be a great view, you know. That's where I got a lot of my own inspiration that way. Yes?
We're primarily on the East Coast, but I have a book from Maine, and you mentioned here the Great Smokies and so forth. What other areas have you found inspiring? Have you also made books of?
The books are primarily Adirondacks, New York State, the Smokies, as you mentioned, Blue Ridge, and Maine. We've traveled all around the states. I've been to most every state in the, you know, this kind of quadrant. I haven't been to the Pacific Northwest because I always wanted to have enough block of time to go there and stay there for a while, and it never happened yet. So I've got lots of places to go yet, but the books are predominantly, you know, here in the East. Yes?
I think I heard you say minus 25 degrees. What's it like being up there that cold?
Cold?
Can you repeat the question? Repeat the question.
Oh, what's it like being up there at 25 below? You dress warm, you dress in layers. The hiking isn't, I mean, for me, I was always comfortable doing that. When I started hiking, I had an old VW bus, air cooled. And I remember driving from Brant Lake to, you know, Sable Club area, and wondered why it never felt like it warmed up. And I'm in my full gear driving up. And when I got home that night, I hiked all day and I drove back home, never had any heat in the van. And I drove back home and I heard it had been 45 below in Saranac Lake that night. So it's like once you go below zero, the temperature kind of feels the same. The wind can really bite at you. Gear that I had back then, it was all wool. I didn't have wool, there was some nylon, but didn't have the wind pants and stuff. I mean, today's gear is like a dream come true. It is just so light and so easy. The windproof, breathable, waterproof, the layers of Primaloft and things like that now is just so light compared to, it was my, you know, basically the weight of what my summer gear was back then. And so things have really changed. So it's, if things get really cold, and it's like for doing the time lapse, I'm up there for 3 hours at those temperatures. And when things get really cold, you see anybody up there doing jumping jacks, you'll know who it is. Yes?
Building off of that question though, what about your camera equipment? How does that handle the cold?
This modern camera equipment handles it much better than my earlier. In my 101, when the camera would start getting down to near zero, the shutter would not function. It wouldn't open up. And so I have a roll of, a box of slides at home where you can see I have the whole picture, then you see part of a picture and part of a picture and part of a picture. And, but with doing the time lapse, the camera was set up there for close to 3 hours and taking pictures the whole time. And I still had battery life left and everything was fine. Now, some cameras don't handle it as well. This one does. Another question? Yes?
You said that as soon as you used the digital camera, you were sold. What was the selling points that made you prefer the digital to the other cameras you were using?
So why was I sold on digital? There's a lot of it comes down to dynamic range capture, the amount of range of light that the camera can capture in a single shot. Film was, slide film captured, okay. So let's go back a minute. A stop of light is a measurement of a stop of light is it doubles from what's considered one stop. The next is twice the amount of light, twice the amount of light, twice the amount of light, twice the amount of light. So it's a kind of a given range of light. And slide film has a dynamic range of about 5 stops. The early digital cameras, so that first digital camera I had a dynamic range of about 7 stops. So it could encompass a whole lot more in a single frame of that was shot. And my D750 has a dynamic range of 14.5 stops, which brings it really close to what you can see with the human eye. So most of my shooting I can do now with a single frame, and I can do the enhancement in Photoshop. It's not manipulation. Manipulation is when you put a moose in the picture. I enhance my pictures. I do post-processing where I used to do pre-processing. Yes?
Is your equipment made in this country, and if it's made elsewhere, for what targeted audience was it created?
What's the target audience?
For the creation of your equipment. Is it made in another country?
Is the camera equipment made in the U.S. or elsewhere? And practically all camera equipment is made elsewhere. Most of it originates in Japan, which farms it out to Thailand and other places. Nikon is all foreign, Canon is foreign, Sony, most of it's Japanese based. Kodak was the only US manufacturer, and they tossed digital out the window. They created it, and then they put it on the shelf. So the market is, everything from all kinds of photography. And, but it's all mostly based out of the country, the production. Yes?
This might sound like a dumb question, but when you take the aurora pictures that you said, like, you can't really see it with your eye, right? You can capture it better with the camera. How do you know? Like, oh, this is a good time for the aurora. If you can't really see it, are you just out there taking pictures every night hoping that something's going to show up?
How do you know there's an aurora if you can't actually see it? That's a good question. So when I was first up here and realized what was going on between the TV and what was going on outside, I could tell there was an aurora when you started getting the lines across the screen. And then when they got really heavy and you could barely see what was there, it was like, you might as well go out and see the show that's outside because you can't see the one that's inside anyhow. And so you just hope you had clear weather. But it was the best aurora prediction I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And I've often thought it would still be great to have that old black and white TV and the antenna on top there because it really predicted when there was an aurora. Today there are online prediction services, and it can show you pretty well. And you need to know if that there's at least a KP6 in order to have it visual locally. And then it's knowing what to look for. I can go out and I can kind of see the glow. Now, thinking along those lines is when I moved up here, there was no glow anywhere on the horizon if there wasn't aurora or a moon or something like that. You had pure black right down to the horizon, especially in the north. At this point, there is a light glow from the south, from the Albany, Glens Falls corridor. It goes up 45 degrees in the sky if you take a picture of it. And to the north, I realized when I was taking pictures and it's like, why is there a glow? It's like, we're 125 miles from Montreal. And then I went up on Clear Pond Mountain on the Elk Lake Preserve to hopefully photograph an aurora one night because there was a good prediction it would happen. And it actually did. But when I was there, I realized that the glow that I was seeing in Brant Lake was from the lights of Montreal, 120, because it was more pronounced on Clear Pond Mountain. And so it used to be when I saw a glow on the northern horizon, I knew it was northern lights. Now I look out and I see the glow that I see is what I use to photograph and have the shafts in it. I mean, in recent years. I mean, when you have a really brilliant display, it's just there. It's so bright. It'll illuminate the landscape. And so, the night sky has changed. Aurora prediction has changed. But they still happen. And this is a fairly active cycle that we're in. So hopefully we'll have some good opportunities over the next year or so to see and photograph the aurora.
Let's do one more question.
So one more question? Yes, I've been seeing a hand.
Carl, beautiful images. What lenses do you like to use with your 750?
What lenses do I like to use? I'm using a full frame camera. And so the focal range is generally from 17 to 120. I have two lenses that I have with me for my landscape work primarily. One's a 17 to 35 2.8 lens, and the other is a 24 to 120 f4 lens.
You carry those everywhere.
And those are, my go-to lenses. If I have a specific purpose I'm going out for, I'll take other lenses along. I've got a 70 to 200 2.8 and a teleconverter and fisheye and lots of other lenses. But primarily for the work that I do, it's the 17 to 35 and 24 to 120. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carl. That was wonderful. So Carl, we'll stay here for a few more minutes if anybody has any additional questions or again would like to buy something. I do want to invite you all tomorrow night to join us on Zoom at 7 o'clock for our next program in our Adirondacks for All, Identity and Environmental Justice in the North Country series. Later this month, we have two fantastic events happening here at the museum. On August 20th, our inaugural Mushroom Mania Festival, and on August 27th, we bring back the annual Mohawk and Abenaki Art Market. The next program in our Artist and Inspiration series will be September 12th. It will be a hybrid program. It will be on Zoom, and then there will also be in person. You can check the ADKX website for information on all these events. And I do just want to say, Artist and Inspiration, the exhibit that has inspired all of these programs, is under construction. The fence is up, the contractors are all on site, and in 10 months and 23 days, we will open the new exhibit, and you can see Carl Heilman's snowshoes as part of that exhibit. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight.